You will be shocked by Parker Schnabel's path from living on a friend's sofa to owning a $15 million gold mine. He had already earned $13 million in gold by the age of 24. He now drives automobiles worth more than most people's homes and pays his employees more than physicians do in a year. But here's what you can't see with Gold Rush cameras: the crazy visits to Vegas, the expensive cars, and the true cause of his girlfriend's breakup. Let's explore the private life of the wealthiest young celebrity on television. Parker Schnabel was not a typical child. The first time he worked heavy machinery, he was 5 years old. That took place in Haines, Alaska, in his grandfather's mine. It was not a playground, and was known as Big Nugget Mine. It truly was a gold mine in operation. Parker wasn't only there to observe. John Schnabel, his grandpa, was an advocate of teaching by example. Parker was therefore learning how to manage actual trucks rather than toy ones. While other children were still learning how to use training wheels, he was sitting in the driver's seat of loaders and dozers. Everything was molded by that early encounter. There are around 1,700 people living in the little town of Haines. There is nature all around it, and it's a hard life there. Summers are brief, and winters are lengthy. You mend things on your own if they break. Parker how to work hard, think quickly, and maintain focus from growing up in that setting. Laziness was not much of an option. Parker was learning how to move soil, lead workers, and comprehend the worth of gold while other children played video games. Things began to alter when Parker was 16 years old. The condition of his granddad was deteriorating. There was more to John Schnabel than family. In the mining industry, he was a legend and a mentor. When John died on March 18, 2016, at the age of 96, Parker was left to bear the whole burden of the family company. He was now in complete control of Big Nugget Mine, where he had previously assisted in its operation. It was a sentimental moment. It was difficult enough to lose his granddad. It was made much more difficult by taking over the entire organization at such a young age. Parker, however, did not give up. He assumed command and ensured the mine survived. Then everyone was taken aback by a choice. Parker chose to purchase mining equipment with his full $663,000 education money rather than attend college. It wasn't a guess. It was a well-planned action. He was prepared to risk everything because he believed in what he was doing. He was able to increase his operations, boost productivity, and extract more gold than ever before thanks to that funding. Although it was risky, it was successful. That investment eventually grew to millions. When Parker Schnabel first appeared in front of the cameras, he was just 16 years old. He was anonymous, quiet, and youthful. He was deemed unsuitable by Gold Rush's producers. They weren't sure. It didn't seem like the type of tale that could sustain an entire season, a teenager in charge of a mining team. Then, however, they witnessed him in action. Parker was raised on Alaska's Big Nugget Mine. Since he was able to walk, his grandfather John Schnabel had taught him everything. He was more than a child with a well-known last name. He was a skilled operator. He was able to discuss tactics and was aware of the dangers. The crew observed him demonstrate how to operate a mine from top to bottom during his initial tryout. No coaching, no script, just unadulterated information. They had seen more adults than that. His ease with equipment was what truly made things go forward. At 16, he used calm hands to operate heavy machinery. He was aware of the functions of each component, when to replace it, how to utilize it, and potential problems. He wasn't speculating. He was at work. Books don't teach that type of competence. It is the result of years spent in the soil. Taking a chance, the producers signed him. That gamble paid well. Parker negotiated a price of $25,000 per episode when he initially joined. For someone so young, the figure was unexpected, but he wasn't only wasting screen time, he was in charge of actual operations. Millions might be saved or lost as a result of his judgments. Parker's worth quickly increased as the show expanded, and the public watched his trip. He eventually earned up to $100,000 each show. Parker didn't start living like a star despite those figures. He didn't purchase large homes or fancy automobiles. He used his money to travel with his team, go hunting, and support those close to him. He would rather spend money on memories than material possessions, he once stated. He was unique because of such attitude. In reality TV, he was grounded in a certain manner. It was not an easy task. Each gold rush season required months to film. Planning, shooting, and editing were all on that timetable. Parker had to spend the most of his time under pressure, on location, and on camera. Parker was in charge of extensive mining activities in the center of the Yukon, while the majority of teens were preoccupied with their studies or athletics. When Parker Schnabel accomplished one of the most remarkable gold hauls in contemporary mining, he was just in his early 20s. The Klondike is where it took place. Renowned for its harsh climate, difficult terrain, and difficult-to-find gold, Parker and his team were able to extract 1,029 ounces of gold in a single season. At the time, that much gold was worth more than $1.7 million. It was more than simply a personal victory for a man of his age. It altered his reputation throughout the mining industry. That haul wasn't a coincidence. Every step Parker made had to be planned. Under the strict schedule of a brief mining season, he was managing a large staff, operating wash plants, and keeping machinery running constantly. Even though it was exhausting, he managed to keep things going. Many individuals are broken by that type of strain. Parker gave the impression that he belonged there. He dominated, not just got by. The timing was what gave the occasion even greater impact. The majority of folks his age were either attempting to get their first job or sitting in college lecture rooms. Pulling more than $1 million out of the dirt, Parker was left out in the cold. It wasn't only gold in that 1,029-ounce haul. He knew the country, the danger and the grind better than most people twice his age, and it was evidence of that. This accomplishment turned out to be pivotal. Big money wasn't the only factor. It elevated Parker to a key role in Gold Rush and demonstrated that he was more than just fortunate. He began to be perceived by viewers as more than just a young man wielding a shovel. He was starting to play seriously. That season marked the beginning of all that followed, and it set him on a new course. Even seasoned miners were taken aback by Parker's move years later. Dominion Creek cost him $15 million. He was only 28 at the time. With up to $200 million worth of gold left in the ground, Dominion was renowned for its enormous potential. But there were also significant hazards involved. Parker needed to mine 10,000 ounces every season for 6 years in order to break even. Everything he put into the deal would be lost if he missed that figure. Things didn't go as planned. Only 135 ounces were pulled by his crew in the first 4 weeks. They were slowed down by frozen terrain. Equipment began to malfunction. It felt like everything that could go wrong came at them at once. Parker did not fold. He made improvements to his machinery, altered tactics, and even invested $540,000 in new water pumps that could pump 76 gallons per minute, aid in the recovery of gold. He persisted even though every step was a risk. He was well represented in the Dominion trade. He wasn't looking for quick victories. He was creating something durable. He believed the long-term reward and saw past the immediate losses. The majority would have retreated. Despite Parker's best efforts, the pressure persisted. The circumstances in Dominion Creek were difficult by the beginning of 2025. Costs continued to mount, and the figures weren't turning out as he had intended. Parker therefore made another transfer in February, which was the middle of the season. For $2.5 million, he purchased Gold Run and Sulphur Creek, 2 additional claims. It was audacious, dangerous, and unexpected. These assertions weren't chosen at random, they had a past. Despite being mined for more than a century, Gold Run and Sulphur Creek still contained solid gold. The workers extracted 141.65 ounces from one of the cuttings at Sulphur Creek after only 2 days of mining. They hadn't seen an outcome like that all season. The mood began to change. Making this choice wasn't simple. It takes a lot of work to move wash plants and equipment over 25 miles of rough terrain. The crew was divided. It was deemed brilliant by some. Others were concerned that Parker was accruing more debt. However, he maintained his composure. He said that he had already accepted the obligation and was prepared to accept any subsequent response, either adulation or remorse. The acquisition became one of Gold Rush Season 15's most dramatic scenes. It demonstrated that Parker had not stopped taking chances. He didn't retreat even when it seemed like everything was collapsing. He intensified. Everyone in the audience was reminded by his action that he didn't succeed by being cautious. It resulted from having to make difficult decisions and accept the consequences. If Parker hadn't previously accomplished something that most kids only dream of, none of this would be as remarkable. He had extracted more than $13 million worth of gold from the earth by the time he reached 24. Such a figure is uncommon. At that age, the majority of people are beginning their professions. Parker had one going already. His journey began at his grandfather's large Alaskan nugget mine. He picked things up quickly, and at the age of 18 he made a big choice. He leased land from Tony Beets in the Klondike using the funds that were meant to be spent for tuition. His entire future was molded by that one action. He began managing his own site, assembling his own crew, and studying every aspect of the work, geology, tools, and leadership. Unlike other young billionaires, he did not spend his money in the same manner. No sports vehicles, no large homes. Rather, he returned it to his business. He purchased better gear, reached new heights, and prioritized long-term development. He strived to improve every season. He was able to stay ahead because of his focus. At the age of 18, Parker Schnabel left his family's big nugget mine in Alaska and made his way to the Klondike. He started a mining business using his college funds rather than utilizing them to attend classes. Tony Beets was the first person he went to. Tony was already well known in the mining industry at the time. Tony had what Parker needed, and Parker needed ground to mine. They came to an agreement, which was Parker's first significant step as a self-employed miner. However, there was a cost to the bargain. Tony took full advantage of the fact that Parker was young and inexperienced. At first glance, the royalty system appeared straightforward, 15% of the initial 1,500 ounces. However, there was a 5% rise for each additional 1,500 ounces. Parker was paid 25% when he reached 6,000 ounces. Only in Season 8, when he had to cease mining at 6,000 ounces to save from going bankrupt, did he realize how awful the arrangement was. Parker made it apparent how awful things had gone in Season 9. "We give Tony Beets almost $2 million on 8,000 ounces, he added. "To be honest, I would be broke if I did that." Tony refused to budge when Parker attempted to renegotiate. Parker was forced to be inventive by the rejection. He devised a scheme to recalculate the royalties count. His crew would swap wash plants once they approached the 1,500 ounce threshold. Tony wouldn't be able to follow the total in a straight line that way. Although it was a flaw, it was effective. Then the day arrived when their silent conflict erupted into a full-scale conflict. Tony discovered that Parker had been transferring soil from another claim via Tony's property in order to evade paying further royalties in March 2017 during Season 8. Tony quickly turned everything off as he noticed rock trucks slinking through his yard. In front of the cameras, he barged into Parker's business and released, "You have been using rock trucks to sneak through the yard all week," Tony screamed. "According to the terms of the contract, you are only allowed to sluice such material while you are renting the ground from us." Parker refused to give up. He chastised Tony for his avarice. "This year you will receive more than $1 million. You just need to relax and earn money." Parker lost his temper when Tony suggested that wasn't enough. "You may then go **** yourself." Their rivalry became one of the most intense in Gold Rush history after that statement. Even as the rivalry intensified, their relationship continued to change. Tony had taken on the role of mentor back in Season 4. However, he considered Parker to be a serious threat by 2025. Tony leased Parker only the portion of his Indian River claim that he didn't want in the Season 13 opener. In addition to being a tiny gesture of respect, it was calculated. Tony never gave Parker a straight compliment. He made fun of Parker's strategy in public. After witnessing Parker attempt to manage 3 wash plants simultaneously, he said on January 28, 2025, that Parker was taking on more than he could handle. Additionally, he said that Parker's emphasis on short-term objectives will come back to haunt him. He wasn't totally incorrect either. Just 9 weeks into the season, Parker was $2.5 million in debt in early 2025 as he worked to launch Dominion Creek. Tony, however, witnessed what Parker was doing behind closed doors. According to industry sources, he explained to his son Kevin that Parker's gold recovery rates were not something to be laughed at but rather something to learn from. Tony was aware of the child's goodness. Todd Hoffman and Parker Schnabel's narrative involves more than simply their rivalry. It's a full-on conflict between pride, ambition, and diametrically opposed ideas on how to manage a gold mine. It began with a transaction that ought to have been straightforward but instead influenced Gold Rush's course. Parker purchased a wash plant from Todd during the most dramatic moment of the performance. It cost 700 grams of gold, which at the time was around $46,000. Todd felt that selling off what he considered to be a worthless piece of equipment was a wise choice. Parker, however, had other ideas. He managed to make it work. His gold operation developed to rely heavily on that same wash unit. Todd had misjudged Parker from the beginning, so his success from that so-called rubbish was a kick in the face. It was more than simply a painful moment. It made the distance between them wider. Parker was getting up. Todd was losing his strength. Todd also didn't remain silent. Parker, he claimed, was disrespectful, particularly to senior employees. Todd stated in interviews that it was difficult to see seasoned staff members fired by a young person. Regarding others who had been in the industry for a much longer, he portrayed Parker as conceited and irresponsible. This was more than a work-related problem. It turned into a dispute between generations. Todd represented custom and history. Parker stood for results and transformation. The crowd was divided by their interactions. Some supported Todd because they valued loyalty and deference. Others praised Parker's determination and ability to deliver outcomes no matter what. Words weren't the end of it. On many occasions, the animosity between their teams erupted. In fact, there were fights on the set. Direct physical altercations. Drama was not the purpose of them. They were authentic. A straightforward dispute about mining yields once turned into a fight among the workforce. Allegations of yelling matches and sabotage were made. The situation deteriorated to the point that the production crew had to intervene to prevent a total collapse. Not only was it embarrassing to observe, it was harmful. Morale declined. As the tension increased, viewers began to question if the show could continue in this manner. Things reached a breaking point in 2018. Todd Hoffman departed from the performance. There was more to his leaving than business. For some time, his procedure had been having trouble. There were hardly many profits. Season after season, Parker, however, was setting new records. It was difficult to avoid the similarity. The urge to continuously compare himself to Parker had a negative impact on Todd. In interviews following his departure, Todd acknowledged that the poisonous environment was a major factor in his choice. He said that reality TV was having an impact on his mental health and personal life. It was no longer worthwhile. Although he eventually made a comeback with Hoffman Family Gold, his departure from Gold Rush signaled the end of one of the most fierce battles on reality TV. Parker Schnabel's tale was developing away from the mines. He met Ashley Yule in Australia in 2016. She worked as a veterinary nurse and had a positive vibe that was unaffected by the harsh realities of mining. They dated for 2 years after Parker asked her to go with him on the Klondike. She wasn't only a supporting character. The gold chamber was where she worked. She assisted the workers. In a 2017 interview with Maxim, Parker even said that Ashley wasn't given enough credit for the success of that summer. Nevertheless, their love ended despite all of the achievements. After winning 8,400 ounces of gold valued over $10 million in the Season 8 finale, Parker made an unusual admission. He referred to his split with Ashley as one of his worst mistakes. He said that she deserved more and that he didn't prioritize her. Ashley never discussed it in public. After discreetly removing all traces of Parker from her social media accounts, she left for Australia. Parker's remorse was all the more evident because of that stillness. On August 13, 2018, a few months later, followers took notice. Parker shared a picture of herself with British TV personality Sheena Cowell. She was employed by Knickerbocker Glory TV, a reality production firm. People began speculating right away since the photo seemed personal. Was she his new girlfriend? Only a few months after Ashley's split, the timing added to the suspicions. However, neither of them provided any confirmation. Sheena's background in the sector felt appropriate for someone leading such a unique lifestyle. In 2024, Parker even admitted to People magazine that he sometimes seems like he comes from a dismal, crazy world when he explains what he does. However, when it was revealed in 2019 that Sheena already had a partner, the rumors subsided. Tyler Mahoney followed. Parker hooked up with the fourth-generation Australian gold prospector in 2020 during Season 4 of Gold Rush, Parker's Trail. Their ages were same. Gold mining was ingrained in both of them. There was an instant spark between them. Fans took note. Social media exploded. There were a lot of theories on Reddit. Throughout each of the 9 episodes, viewers kept a tight eye out for any indications of a developing relationship. That notion was not avoided by the play itself. Their collaboration and mutual enthusiasm were emphasized in the editing. However, if anything took on behind the scenes, it was never shown on TV. In contrast to Ashley, there was respect for one another and enjoyable television, but no kiss was caught or confirmed. Fans questioned if Tyler would continue to play a significant role in Parker's tale once he subsequently purchased a claim in Australia. No formal statement has been released as of 2023 or 2024. Neither of them has provided any confirmation, yet the romance rumors have persisted. It is evident that they complement each other nicely. The relationship between Parker and his cameraman, James Lavelle, soured back in 2018. While Parker's Trail was being filmed in Papua New Guinea, they got along well at first, but soon there was a creative tension. When Lavelle insisted on recording a perilous river crossing on July 12, everything went haywire. Parker resisted, but Lavelle continued to roll. A yelling fight that lasted for more than 3 hours ensued. From over 100 meters away, crew members could hear them shouting. Parker threatened to quit the project altogether at the end of it. Executives at Discovery had to intervene. Lavelle was removed from the shoot on July 15. A mere 3 days later, only 60% of the scheduled material had been shot by that point. The adjustments cost Discovery over $380,000, and the production was thrown into disarray. There was more harm to come. Lavelle sued Raw TV, the show's production company, for breach of contract on September 3. Parker and Lavelle never spoke again after the lawsuit was resolved out of court in February 2019. Parker made news once more a few months later, but for a far less dramatic reason. He was stopped by Trooper Michael Ingram on the Haines Highway in Alaska on March 17, 2019, at around 2:15 p.m. He had been operating his 2018 Ford F-150 in a 55-degree zone at 64 miles per hour, only 4 to 9 kilometers outside the bounds. A $60 ticket was issued to him with citation number AK1903275. This wouldn't have been spotted otherwise, because Parker didn't reply to the ticket. The court issued a warning on April 12. On May 6, he ultimately entered a plea of no contest. The story quickly gained traction after being picked up by TMZ on May 12. Parker might have used the spare change from his gold trousers to pay the fee, according to a joke in a widely shared tweet. The problem wasn't the fine, it was the response. Some admirers began to doubt his level of responsibility. Then 2024 arrived. It was only going to be another Gold Rush season. Rather, it almost broke him. Throughout Season 15's production, Parker was driven to the brink by a string of catastrophes. The Dominion Creek claim had a significant equipment breakdown on June 12. The anticipated loss in the possible recovery of gold was $2.3 million. Permit problems prompted a 17-day stoppage a few days later. Another $1.5 million was spent on overhead and lost output as a result of the delay. Parker's financial reserves had dropped to $78,000 on August 3rd, insufficient to sustain the operation for a week. He pawned his 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air as a final resort. One of Parker's most treasured things was the vehicle, which had belonged to his late grandpa. He utilized the $115,000 he received to pay his employees. He called an emergency meeting with his workers on August 28, since the situation had gotten so bad. He offered them the choice to go without facing any consequences. Mitch Blaschke was one of 3 important team members that remained. They put in 2 weeks of unpaid labor to aid Parker's recuperation. They eventually achieved a lucrative pay streak on September 7, producing 1,872 ounces of gold in a single week. It was around $3.5 million. The entire operation was saved. Only a few of these instances were used in the presentation, but the most of this was captured on camera. The entire tale was deemed too dramatic to broadcast. Parker maintains a startling level of self-control in spite of everything. He has enormous mining activities. In just season 14, his crew earned $24 million. According to reports, he makes over $100,000 every episode. This comes to around $2 million every season. But he doesn't spend like someone who makes that much money. Parker has stated in interviews that he doesn't even own a home away from his mine. He once crashed on a couch belonging to a buddy in Los Angeles. Other accounts, however, paint a different picture. According to some, he owns a number of properties, including a property in the Yukon and another in Haines, Alaska. His 2,000 square foot Alaskan house had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths according to one listing. According to another account, he spent more than $950,000 for his ideal home. Additionally, he is thought to be among the biggest landowners in the Klondike area. He displays part of his wealth through his cars. He has a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon designed for tough travel and a customized Ford Raptor with red and black accents. Several ATVs, a modified Chevrolet Silverado, and a Jeep Wrangler for off-road excursions are dispersed over his mining property. Despite all of that, he maintains that he doesn't enjoy extravagant spending. "I don't really spend a lot of money on material things," he stated. He wants experiences instead. He travels with his group each year. They went hunting. They've ran in Vegas for 3 days. He once went to a World Series game with his father. In 2023, he traveled to London for 3 weeks. The majority of his earnings are reinvested in his mining company.